What happens when a secret weapons system changes the rules of modern warfare? And 87 enemy tanks vanish before sunrise. On September 25, 2025, the war in eastern Ukraine reached a turning point few expected. In the early hours of that morning, North Korea, under direct coordination with Russian command, deployed an armored force unlike anything previously seen on that front. A total of 87 tanks, T-62s and T-72s, along with BTR-80 personnel carriers and BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles, crossed into the Donbass region under cover of darkness. Their mission was simple: break through Ukraine's defensive line, fast and hard, and collapse the front in one concentrated push. But Ukraine had prepared the battlefield down to the inch, and every route into that valley had been turned into a kill zone. Satellite imagery picked up the armored movement just after 3:12 a.m. The column was tight and deliberate, headlights dimmed to avoid detection. Russian Orlan 10 reconnaissance drones hovered overhead, transmitting live coordinates to artillery spotters, guiding the North Korean tanks through narrow, snow-covered rural roads. To the untrained eye, it looked like a routine reinforcement operation. But to the analysts watching from Kiev, something stood out immediately. The villages along the route were completely dark, windows boarded up, roads abandoned, not a single civilian light visible. It was a sign that this was no ordinary convoy. Ukraine had deliberately evacuated and emptied the area weeks in advance. Every field, bridge, and crossroads had been mapped by reconnaissance drones and marked by special operations teams. The trap was already in place. By 3:21 a.m., the leading T-62 in the center of the column rolled directly over a buried anti-tank mine. The explosion sent a fireball 60 feet into the air, flipping the 82,000-pound vehicle onto its side and tearing off its treads. Within seconds, another blast struck a BTR-80 troop carrier just behind it, scattering shrapnel and debris across the frozen road. Chaos erupted instantly. Radio channels filled with overlapping voices and orders. Engines roared as tanks tried to reverse, only to hit more mines hidden along their retreat path. The valley had been layered with overlapping mine corridors, each packed with PG-7VL warheads and 150mm artillery shells wired to pressure detonators. Within moments, secondary explosions began chaining down the line. Each detonation triggered another, turning the valley into a cascade of shockwaves and flying metal. Fuel tanks ignited, ammunition cooked off, and dense columns of black smoke rose into the night sky. Ukrainian fire control teams stationed along elevated ridges miles away had been waiting for this exact signal. Their targeting data, fed in real time by British satellites and French SIGINT teams, confirmed that the entire enemy formation was now stationary. The order was given: fire. At 3:27 a.m., the first artillery barrage began. British AS-90, howitzers, and French Caesar self-propelled guns firing from over 18 miles away launched shells with pinpoint accuracy. Each 155mm round created a crater nearly 3 feet deep, sending fragments of steel flying more than 300 feet in all directions. The first salvo struck the command vehicles and fuel trucks clustered in the center of the formation. The results were devastating. Fireballs erupted, secondary detonations followed, and the armored line disintegrated under the precision bombardment. Then, the HIMARS joined in. Guided rockets streaked through the night sky, striking multiple T-72s and ammunition trucks. One T-72 was hit squarely in its turret ring. The resulting explosion launched the entire turret nearly 40 feet into the air before crashing back down in flames. Overhead, French Rafale jets jammed radar systems and relayed thermal imagery directly to Ukrainian gunners. Drones marked surviving tanks with infrared lasers for follow-on strikes. A second wave of artillery hit 20 seconds later, this time targeting rear positions and escape routes. By 3:30 a.m., the entire valley was lit by fire. The temperature near the burning vehicles exceeded 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat warped steel and melted road surfaces. Smoke was visible from over 10 miles away. Ukrainian coordination was flawless. a joint execution between intelligence, artillery, and drone units that left the armored formation with nowhere to move. FPV, first-person view drones armed with thermobaric warheads, began their runs, descending silently onto exposed vehicles. One drone dived straight into the rear of a T-72, igniting its ammunition rack and blowing apart the chassis. Another intercepted a retreating BMP-2, attempting to reverse up a hill. The detonation tore through its hull, scattering fragments across the slope. French special forces positioned nearby confirmed secondary explosions and called for direct fire support. British crews switched to airburst munitions, shells programmed to detonate 30 feet above the ground, raining high-velocity shrapnel onto vehicle crews who had dismounted in panic. At the same time, electronic warfare teams from France and the United Kingdom jammed Russian and North Korean radio frequencies. Inside the tanks, crews found themselves completely cut off. No communications, no visibility, and no way out. At 3:33 a.m., the shelling paused for only a few seconds before resuming again, heavier than before. Every round now landed with near-perfect precision. The valley floor became a landscape of fire and wreckage. Russian spotter drones attempted to regain contact, but were shot down by Ukrainian air defense units before they could transmit. The coordinated strike had completely blinded the attackers. By 3:40 a.m., the results were undeniable. At least 60% of the North Korean tanks were destroyed. Dozens of vehicles burned uncontrollably, their turrets detached, their ammunition still detonating in rhythmic bursts. Yet not every tank had been neutralized. A small number of T-72s and T-62s still had functioning engines. With retreat impossible and communications severed, the North Korean field commander issued a desperate order: advance. If they were going to die, they would die moving forward. Engines roared. Surviving tanks formed up and began pushing through the burning wreckage. Coaxial machine guns fired into the tree lines to suppress any possible ambush. Smoke shells exploded along the flanks to obscure movement. The objective was no longer victory, it was escape. The tanks surged up the narrow valley, firing blindly toward the ridges. But Ukraine was ready. Along the tree line, anti-tank teams lay in wait. Each operated in pairs, equipped with British NLAW launchers, French AT-4 variants, and American Javelin missiles. They had been trained for this exact moment. The first Javelin locked onto a T-62 attempting to pivot out of a crater. The missile struck from above, piercing the thinner top armor and triggering a catastrophic internal detonation. The entire vehicle disappeared in a fireball, flames shooting 40 feet upward. Another missile, launched from just 100 yards away, hit the side of a BMP-2, shattering it instantly. The wreck blocked the road completely. Other tanks tried to veer into frozen fields, but quickly became bogged down in mud and snow. Their treads spun uselessly. Drones overhead transmitted live coordinates back to artillery batteries, which adjusted their targeting solutions within seconds. French Caesar guns and British AS-90s resumed fire, launching precision airburst rounds every 30 seconds. Each detonation shredded vehicle crews and destroyed exposed optics. Within 4 minutes, the armored push collapsed entirely. Only 6 tanks managed to break through the initial fire zone. 3 were immediately hit by HIMARS rockets. One T-72 took a direct hit to its rear engine compartment. The tank lurched forward in flames before stopping dead. Another was struck mid-turn, the explosion lifting it several feet off the ground. The remaining 3 tried to fall back but found no safe route, only wreckage and burning fuel. Ukrainian infantry advanced behind the destruction, supported by quadcopters and FPV drones, dropping RKG-1000 grenades directly onto engine decks. Each grenade penetrated armor plates and ignited fuel cells. By 3:47 a.m., all forward momentum was gone. The counterattack had failed. What had begun as a mechanized assault had become a graveyard of metal and fire. Burned-out hulls littered the valley floor. Bodies lay scattered among wrecked vehicles. The few survivors who escaped their tanks were quickly spotted by drones and neutralized by sniper fire from the ridges. There was no rescue, no reinforcement, and no escape. By 4:10 a.m., the battlefield was silent. Over 60 armored vehicles were confirmed destroyed or disabled. The only sounds were crackling fires and the occasional explosion from detonating ammunition. Drone footage captured by Ukrainian intelligence showed a long trail of wrecked armor stretching through the valley, proof of total annihilation. The North Korean contingent, sent under Russian command, had been wiped out in less than 1 hour. By 4:30 a.m., Ukrainian ground units moved in to secure the area. Engineers began clearing debris and checking for unexploded ordnance. Medics entered next, searching for survivors. Near a collapsed barn, they found 2 North Korean crewmen, one severely burned, the other barely conscious. Despite the devastation, Ukrainian medics treated them immediately. Bandages were applied, water was offered. One soldier even removed his own jacket to cover the wounded man. There was no hesitation, no revenge, only duty. A few hundred yards away, a small group of Russian soldiers emerged from a damaged structure with their hands raised. They were cold, disoriented, and unarmed. Ukrainian troops approached carefully, but without aggression. "You are safe now," one soldier told them in Russian. "We will follow the rules." The prisoners were escorted to temporary holding areas, given medical attention, and supplied with water and food. Those able to walk were led on foot. Those who couldn't were carried on stretchers. Within minutes, field tents were converted into makeshift aid stations. Bread, tea, and basic medical supplies were distributed. Body cameras, later released by Ukrainian units, showed soldiers adjusting the prisoners' gear to make them more comfortable and speaking to them with calm, clear instructions. It wasn't about appearances or propaganda. Many of the Ukrainian soldiers had lost comrades just hours earlier, but they understood the line between combat and cruelty. Commanders reminded them that every action mattered, not just on the battlefield, but in the eyes of the world and their own conscience. As dawn broke over Donbas, the valley lay in ruins. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of fuel. Engineers continued to clear wreckage while explosive ordnance teams neutralized live munitions. Medical teams worked around the clock, not only for their own wounded, but also for captured enemies. Red Cross representatives were already en route to document the treatment of prisoners. Supplies arrived from logistics units, extra rations, blankets, and bottled water. Ukrainian officers coordinated recovery operations methodically, ensuring the area was safe for retrieval teams and journalists. What had started as one of the largest armored offensives in the region had ended in a single night, dismantled by a combination of intelligence, precision, and restraint. This was not just another battlefield success, it was a demonstration of discipline under extreme pressure. Proof that modern warfare is no longer just about who has more tanks or missiles, but who can integrate data, timing, and humanity into one unified response. Ukraine had turned an entire armored assault into wreckage without losing its moral compass. In a war defined by brutality and propaganda, that mattered. By sunrise, the fires had begun to die down. Drone footage captured the scale of destruction in detail. Dozens of wrecked tanks, blackened fields, and a silent valley now under Ukrainian control. Crews continued to collect evidence for intelligence review, serial numbers, communication logs, and recovered parts confirming North Korean origin. The findings would later be presented to NATO and the UN as evidence of direct foreign involvement in the conflict. The message was clear. Strength and strategy had prevailed, but not at the cost of humanity. Ukraine had defended its soil with precision and professionalism, proving that even amid chaos, discipline and ethics could coexist. Every strike, every decision had been deliberate. No hatred, no excess, just resolve. And that's what made this operation stand apart. It wasn't only the destruction of 87 tanks in under an hour. It was the reminder that true power on the battlefield comes not just from firepower, but from control. Control of information, control of timing, and control of conscience.